Week 5 is going to be a tough one for NFL DFS because if you're a longtime listener, you know our process revolves around stacking games, identifying games that'll be tight and high scoring, and loading up on guys on both sides. If you look at the Week 5 main slate, we don't have the Chiefs. There are no Bills. There are no Rams, no Seahawks, no Ravens. A lot of teams we tend to turn to in terms of game stacks are off the main slate. That does make things pretty tough for this week. I still think there are ways to play things. We could get some value backs that can help things out, but overall, it is a cumbersome slate, to say the least. We're going to break things down, let you know where we are going despite those issues, and how we're viewing things in the Week 5 main slate. Welcome on into the Heat Check Fantasy Podcast, powered by numberFire. That's right here on the FanDuel Podcast Network and numberFire.com. My name is Jim Sonis. I am a senior writer and analyst for numberFire.com. Joined here, as always, by Brandon Gadula. He is the managing editor for numberFire.com. Brandon, heading on to week number 5, how you doing today?
Kind of pained as I look at these 12 games one by one for like the 40th time and try to figure out which game besides the Giants and Cowboys that I would rank second. And even if I could rank one second, I don't know what's third. And it's not because it's one of those weeks where, it's so hard to narrow down these like 5 or 6 great games.
Right.
So like you said, I think that's the real talking point for this week, this show. It's going to probably be a little bit more non-committal than usual, but that's okay because inevitably by Sunday, people will have really strong takes about certain games or situations, and I'm not going to feel that way. So I talk about this a lot with the PGA show that we do, but if I'm kind of not super sold on certain things, I will just go a different route. And that's kind of how I'm going to play a lot of this week.
I think that the separation from one game to the next is pretty small this week, which does make it easier to deviate if people get super jazzed about one game that maybe has some issues. We'll talk about those games in just a bit. But first, a quick reminder that our listener league is posted for week number 5. Go to FanDuel.com/league/listener league. It's a $5 entry with 3 entries max, and there is no rake, which means FanDuel will make nothing off of this contest. That's the kind of contest you want to play each week. So go to FanDuel.com/league/listener league. You get a $5 entry, 3 entries max, no rake, to get yourself entered into that and play against other listeners to the podcast and other stuff as well. FanDuel Sportsbook is running back its risk-free same-game parlay for week 5 in the NFL. All you got to do is head to FanDuel or sportsbook.fanduel.com, place a 3+ leg same-game parlay in any week 5 game. If your bet loses, get a refund and site credit. It is that simple. Head over to FanDuel Sportsbook today and get in on the action with their risk-free same-game parlay. Must be 21 plus and present in Arizona, Colorado, Iowa, Illinois, Indiana, Michigan, New Jersey, Pennsylvania, Tennessee, Virginia, or West Virginia. Refund issued as non-withdrawable site credit that expires in 7 days. Max refund $10. Restrictions apply. See terms at sportsbook.fanduel.com. Same game parlay available for multiple sports in all states on mobile and web. Gambling problem? Call 1-800-GAMBLER or fanduel.com/RG. In Indiana, 1-800-9-WITH-IT. For confidential help in Michigan, 1-800-270-7117. In Tennessee, call the Red Line at 1-800-889-9789. In West Virginia, 1-800-GAMBLER.net. Or in Arizona, call 1-800-NEXT-STEP or text NEXT STEP to 53342. Let's get to our slate overview for week number 5. And Brandon, I think the two things for me are, we discussed before, trying to identify games that we want to stack. But the second thing is value running backs we could have here. We've got Damian Williams for sure. We also, there's a possibility we get Tony Pollard. Like, that's an outside shot. There's a possibility we get Alexander Madison. There is potentially Samaje Perine, Leonard Fournette, depending on Giovanni Bernard. So to me, it is ranking those value plays, deciding who has upside and who does not, and then deciding the game stacks after that. What are the things you're keeping your eye on and focusing on for this week?
Yeah, I think those would be 2 of my keys. Specifically with the game stacks, the question is always with the value running backs of, it's one thing to have like a good point per dollar projection in terms of your salary and your expected fantasy points, but you and I still care about that upside. So that's going to be a big talking point. Unfortunately, we don't have a whole lot certainty to go off of for there. But the other thing that kind of stands out to me, I guess actually two things, but one being bigger than the other is wide receiver at the top in relation to running back at the top, because we have like Derrick Henry at 10,400 in a spot against the Jaguars where he could have a Derrick Henry game. Outside of that, salary drops off, expectations drop off depending on, injuries and just game. Like, I don't have a whole lot of fear of missing out with Alvin Kamara. So you flip it over to wide receiver and you're like, okay, maybe it's a value back heavy wide receiver week. A lot of wide receivers feel like they're justifiably the top salaried guys, but like 7,900 for DJ Moore is a pretty heavy asking price. Again, it's justified, but am I going to get there? Am I going to get to Deebo Samuel, Mike Williams at 7,700, or am I going to try to say, no, those are the guys who are overperforming. Guys with similar roles would be like Keenan Allen at 7,200, CeeDee Lamb at 6,900. Some guys who've like underperformed. So I'm trying to figure out where I'm actually going to try to allocate my salary. And then the other thing that came to mind was like, we don't have a whole lot of tight ends to kind of feel threatened by, with Darren Waller at 7,400, George Kittle not 100%. Like, if we don't play Darren Waller, we're going to have a lot of salary. Then do we spend it on the running backs who might have some issues, or the wide receivers who might be oversalaried? So I don't want to be like rostering wide receivers I don't love at their salaries just because I have the salary to do so. So that's kind of a big piece of it for me this week.
I think the easier route is just use Devontae Adams. Like, that's a very easy solution. Just use a good player.
Use Devontae Adams in every lineup, and then I could have saved myself.
Easy game. Like, we're done. We did it. Congratulations. That's all we need for this week. Use Devontae Adams. I think that like the one good thing with the wide receiver salaries is that although they're ranked highly in terms of salary, like they're not egregious salaries in a vacuum. Like, DJ Moore with his role at 79 is fine.
Yes.
Like, but like he's the third highest salaried guy, which is typically around 82. He's 79. Like, that's, it's not an outrageous salary. So I think that's the one saving grace there. I think with the high salaried backs, like, it depends on the way injuries break this week. Like, if we get Christian McCaffrey with a full practice Friday, cool, I'll use him. If we get Dalvin Cook with a full practice Friday, cool, I'll use him. And Derrick Henry I will use as well. So I think, to me, it depends on how things break later on. Like, there are guys I feel good about in the top range, but like, it's a thin pool. So I think that's kind of what you were getting at. Is it's a thin pool of guys we like in the stud range for this week.
Yeah. So like across all positions, quarterback included, tight end included. There aren't guys who I'm like, I got to be playing heavy exposure to this player. So like, I might have salary to get to Derrick Henry, depending on, because I like some value receiver. Because again, receiver to me feels currently like the guys who are like 75 and above are the guys who have overperformed, and the guys right below that have just underperformed. So I historically like to take a little bit of savings. I don't know if I want to build around Derrick Henry, and it could be stupid not to because I have the salary.
Wait, why not? What?
Like I'm just saying, like I kind of want like a more balanced build with those elite receivers who are kind of undersalaried. Okay. And I realistically can't be building around like CeeDee Lamb and Keenan Allen, and then also getting up to like the Deebo, Mike Williams range while prioritizing Derrick Henry. I can't have both. Okay. Yeah, so the salaries at receiver, while not egregiously high, they're still kind of high for me.
Yeah.
That's how I'm viewing it.
Okay. I think that makes sense. I thought you meant Henry like in a vacuum, and I was like, he's averaging like 16 FanDuel points per game on yardage alone.
Yeah.
Which is stupid.
No, yeah.
So I have no concerns with him personally. But
yes, I just want to make sure that I
got you.
It's kind of a strange build. It's not a typical slate.
I got you. That makes sense. Okay, so let's get into some injuries impacting this week's slate. Two things for the Bears. The first one is not an injury. It's very exciting. Justin Fields going to start for the Bears this week and beyond, starting with the Raiders this week. Second, David Montgomery, unfortunately going to miss 4 to 5 weeks. Damian Williams should get the start this week. You're going to break down the Bears under Fields in the trend section for today. Jimmy Garoppolo missed practice Wednesday due to his calf issue. Not a lock that he sits. This is an indication, though, that Trey Lance may get the ball. They've said that he's going to try. I don't know why. George Kittle also missed practice Wednesday. Elijah Mitchell limited again. Talk about the 49ers in the bookmakers section. Christian McCaffrey got in a limited practice on Wednesday with his hamstring injury, which means he could return this week. Not a lot, but he could return. Talk about them in the trend section. Dalvin Cook didn't practice Wednesday due to his ankle injury. He said he's going to try to play through it, which is kind of the worst case scenario, but it's still an issue. So they were in an amazing spot against the Lions. Assuming that Dalvin plays, what is your level of confidence in him this week?
Level of confidence is probably like the percentage that I would put Dalvin like having a full workload, which is very small. And I know he could do a lot of damage on like 70% of his workload, but then you're getting into, well, this banged up guy is going to be super efficient on a limited workload, and that's not something I really want to bank on. I was in on Dalv last week. It's not like a bitterness thing. It's just they don't really have to force him the ball, especially in this spot. And yes, he could be very efficient, but the probability that he burns us goes down if he's not fully healthy.
And it sounds like he's not. So I think that is, I don't know. It means that I feel less worrisome about like not being as high on him. I think it depends a lot on what he does Friday. If he gets a full practice on Friday, it'll up my confidence a lot.
Yeah.
But I don't think that's going to happen based on the way things are trending right now.
So yeah, and for running backs, they have basically two paths to dominating. It's one is heavy volume, one is just being hyper efficient. The odds that he's either of those things, just not being fully healthy, those both go down.
Yeah, I will judge things based on what he does in practice Friday. So we'll see. Zeke Elliott missed practice Wednesday with a knee issue. It might be nothing, but just to put it out there, if Zeke sits, we are 100% Tony Pollard, correct?
Yeah, I think there's not really. I've gone 100% on a few guys this year already, including Najee Harris. For me, it'd be 100% Pollard at 5,600. We've seen him carry a full workload. We've seen them want to get him the ball. I love that game. Again, we don't care about like floor and fantasy points per dollar in terms of either projections or outcome. We want that ceiling, and Tony Pollard has that if he's in a featured role.
And he would grade out above Damian Williams, above everyone else if that were to happen. Just because we know he's good, we know situation, we know that offense is good. So if we get no Zeke, I don't think it'll happen, but if we get no Zeke, Tony Pollard's the guy. The Giants were still without Sterling Shepard and Darius Slayton at Wednesday's practice, making it likely they'll miss again week 5. We'll talk about them in the trend section. The Titans got A.J. Brown back at practice Wednesday. He was limited due to his hamstring injury. Julio Jones did not practice. Carlos Hyde practiced in full for the Jags, impacting James Robinson. We'll talk more about this game in the bookmaker section. Joe Mixon did not practice Wednesday due to his ankle injury. T. Higgins is back, so he should play this week. Sounds like that is the sentiment there. Samaje Perine would assume lead back duties for the Bengals, but Chris Evans is someone they seem to like a lot for his pass catching abilities. So, Brandon, how would you view Perine if Mixon were to sit?
Yeah. So Perine's like a perfect, like if you picked him up in season long and Joe Mixon's out and you need a running back, you just plug him in. The $5,600 salary is very nice here, but we should feel much more confident in the role that Damian Williams will play for 200 extra in salary than Perine. I'm not saying this is a Chuba Hubbard situation necessarily, but what we expected Chuba Hubbard to play wasn't really what he played. Perine is most likely going to take Mixon's like rushing, but they're going to mix in Chris Evans pretty heavily. Yeah. So I wouldn't cross him off. He would kind of help bring back like a Devontae in the same game to kind of cancel out Devontae's salary, but probably not a whole lot of one-off exposure. Would you say the same?
I mean, like, I think he'd be justifiable, but I also would think that I wouldn't need to prioritize him, I guess, just because of, what you talked about with like the studs being problematic at times. We have Damian Williams, who I feel a lot better about getting pass catching work than Samaje Perine. If it weren't for Evans, and like I knew that Perine would be getting passing game work, I'd feel great. So I think that what I would view here is, what are the odds that Samaje Perine gets good passing game work? If I think the odds are 15%, then I'll use 15%. So I think that's kind of the way I want to handle it here, is ask myself, what are the odds he gets this? I don't think they're super high, but it could happen. So that's probably the way I'll view it.
So I got a question for you. Same salary here. Let's say Zeke is like limited in practice Friday. Would you think Tony Pollard has enough work to be on par with Perine if Mixon's fully out? Is it, or would you feel better about Perine without Mixon? Because like there's a chance that Pollard's just extra involved and they kind of limit Zeke if he's not fully healthy.
I'd have a hard time getting to Pollard there, but
yeah,
I feel like that'd be my.
It was just more of a, you know,
it's a good question. That's kind of where I'm at in Perine, though, where it's actually consideration.
Yeah, that's kind of it also speaks to Pollard maybe being a little bit more involved anyway.
Right.
Yeah.
Okay. One more here for running backs. Gio Bernard returned to practice Wednesday. He was limited, so it's not a lock that he plays. But hypothetically, if Gio were to sit again, how would you view Leonard Fournette at $6,400?
Pretty well. That would, I mean, the kind of issue there is the spread, and you get me a little bit worried about spreads based on your research that you've done because they're 10-point favorites. I don't know if that's big enough to go away from completely. His role was really promising last week, so I would definitely go there. But I wouldn't go so far as to call him a core play. He'd be more of a rotational play.
I'd be pretty heavy on him, just because like
you love him though.
I also worry a bit less about Tampa Bay being conservative when they're ahead, because we've seen them kind of keep the foot on the gas. So it's them and the Chiefs I worry less about than other teams. And like their secondary is banged up, that might help. I've got the spread at 8.23. Like I'm not betting the Dolphins, but I think, it's closer to me. The spread is larger. I think this is a closer game than the Vikings-Lions game. So if I'd use those guys, I think that Fournette, I'd prefer Damian at 58, but I think that Fournette is like half step below to me.
Yeah, I could see that. So I probably, the way that I sold it was a little bit lower on Fournette than I'd actually be. But I would definitely say Damian Williams above him.
Okay. Logan Thomas is on injury reserve for Washington, entering their matchup with the Saints. Very low total. Could be concentrated targets here, though, which can kind of help cancel that out. So are you checking out anyone in this Washington passing game this week?
I always have interest in Terry McLaurin. Other than that, I don't think I need to get there. I'm kind of having trouble narrowing down wide receiver a little bit because a lot of guys are in play for me. I mean, so last week, Terry McLaurin ran 97% of the routes. Adam Humphries was at 77%. Nobody else above 42%. You could maybe make the case that Curtis Samuel gets a bump, but I guess also in the red zone for him because we've seen him historically used in the red zone. I just don't like this game.
Don't either. And people around McLaurin are in much more attractive games. So like his median projection is better than, I don't know. Like his median projection is better than DeAndre Hopkins. And he's probably better overall than, maybe DeAndre Hopkins is a bad example, given his poor workload. His median expectation is better than Mike Williams, but I'd rather stack that game. So I'd rather have Mike Williams or Keenan Allen than Terry McLaurin in that same range. So that's the down. And Ricky Seals-Jones, like I think is interesting, but he also got his salary jacked up to $4,900. Like I'm not totally out, but like he's close enough to Jared Cook, Big Shot Bob Tunyon, other guys who I think are more viable. Max Williams as well. I think I like those guys more.
Yeah, if I like the game better.
Yeah.
But yeah, I mean, for what it's worth, anyone who's really curious, Ricky Seals-Jones played 92% of the snaps, 77% of the routes. So it was a good role.
Yeah.
Like you said, it's still a sub 5,000 salary, but that's kind of high for this game.
Yep. Finally, Teddy Bridgewater missed practice Wednesday as he is still in concussion protocol. Sounds like he has a shot to play, though, based on sentiment around that team. But this game sucks. So is there a scenario where you use anybody from this game? Is it maybe Najee Harris? Maybe?
I don't even know what his salary is, which tells you a lot. So 7,300. That's right. I remember that now. I would be much more inclined to use Cortland Sutton at 6,100. He's one of the best. He might actually be the best projected value in my anticipated air yards relative to his salary. That's about all I got in this game, though.
Yeah, I think Najee, you can go there, but like the ceiling is really bad, and that's what I care more about. So someone on YouTube said Denver defense, yes. Also Pittsburgh defense at $4,000. If Drew Lock starts, yep. Well, let's ride, baby. Let's take a look at what the bookmakers are saying about this week. Taking a look at 3 interesting games based on their totals and such. The Cardinals versus the 49ers is a total of 49.5. The spread is the Cardinals -5, opened at Cardinals -3.5, went down to 5.5, now back up to 5. The total has come down. It was 53.5, and 49.5 still high for this slate, but it definitely has come down. Seems like it might be a reaction to Trey Lance starting because of a more run-heavy script, which does drain clock. So what is your view of this game from a DFS perspective?
I want to like it. The issue is I would kind of single out both of these teams as teams that I don't like from a daily fantasy standpoint, which is wild because I love Kyler. And what I mean by I don't like them from a daily fantasy standpoint is just it is incredibly hard to stack these guys. You and I had a back and forth about Deebo Samuel on Monday on the recap show. Like Deebo is getting some more downfield work, but his overall ADOT is just kind of average, which means some of his other targets are close to the line of scrimmage. But his target share is really hard to like nitpick. But in this game, across everyone's healthy games, do you want to guess how many guys have a target share better than 20%?
I mean, Debo's done it like 16 times, so.
No, I just mean like season, like if you look at everyone's healthy games,
it's
they
probably
played
just
in.
Debo.
I have George Kittle at 22% as well, but that's it.
Yeah.
And Kittle's like not 100%. So we're
Yeah.
looking at like 20% is almost like the bare minimum I need over a larger sample. Maybe if it's like 2 games, it's a little bit more excusable, but these are hard teams to stack. The running back situation for both sides is not really what you want with the split that the Cardinals guys have, with Connor stealing all the red zone work. Like, I want to like this game, but I have a lot of problems with it. And you and I talk about the value of being able to stack certain teams.
Yeah. Well, I think the good thing is that it's not a situation like the Colts last year or like the old school Titans where they were spread out with no upside. Like DeAndre Hopkins had 23 points in week 1. Christian Kirk had 22 points in week 1. Rondale Moore had 21 points a couple weeks ago.
Yeah.
AJ Green's had some good games too. So like they have paths to upside.
Yes.
And like that's what we care about. So like I can still go to them in game stacks. That's not going to scare me out of stacking this game. But like, you know, for one-offs, it matters a lot. For game stacks, I'm still going to get there.
Yeah, I mean, this only really applies though to people building multiple lineups, because you could realistically settle on one of those. I'll call them all secondary, but it's really, I guess, Christian Kirk and AJ Green at this point, because Rondale Moore's kind of fallen off.
I mean, DeAndre Hopkins is kind of secondary at this point too.
Yeah, I didn't want to say that, but
True.
Workload wise, it's virtually all the same. It's really difficult. And like, yeah, these guys have upside, but I think for me, if I'm gonna build around Cardinal stacks, I really, really have to commit and be at like very heavy exposure to Kyler, so that I can build enough lineups where I have enough of his stacking partners to make it worthwhile if one of them hits.
Yeah.
If I have, if I'm playing, let's even say 20 lineups, I have 25% Kyler and like 2 or 3 lineups with each of those guys. That's not enough to make it worthwhile.
If you had to pick one for this week between Nuke, Kirk, and Green, what would you do?
I would, boy, I might honestly
Say it.
go AJ Green.
Oh, I was gonna say Kirk. Okay, sorry.
Uh,
I like Kirk. So last week he faced a lot of Jalen Ramsey. Like it was very predictable he would not do well. But the first 3 games from a yardage perspective, Christian Kirk was the guy. 70, 65, 104. And that means he can get by without a touchdown and he can score touchdowns too. So I think that he is the guy with the easiest path to upside. Like the target share is not there because he had, I think, 1 last week, but he can do it. So I think Kirk is the guy for me on this team for this week. It changes by week, but that's probably the way it should be. So I like Kirk pretty decent amount. As far as 49ers, we don't know who will start a quarterback yet. Let's assume it's Lance. How are you viewing this offense if it is Trey Lance, and Trey Lance specifically at $6,900?
I would love Trey Lance. I feel like you and I are down to maybe 2 quarterbacks, 2.5 quarterbacks that we like
2 right now. If we get Lance, I'll get to a third.
I'm at 2.5.
Okay. Your half is okay. That's fine.
Yeah.
I know who your half is.
Yeah, Daniel Jones.
Yeah, that's fine.
It would be great to have at least 3.5 quarterbacks with Trey Lance. If Trey Lance plays, I'll have a lot of him with 7 carries, 41 yards and a half. You like that. I was kind of tilting about Deebo Samuel's salary. It's justified for how good the role is. From like a market share standpoint, I worry that it's just elevated because of like the long touchdowns he's had.
He's had 12, 8, 10, and 13 targets.
I'm not doing this again.
I'm just telling you, like, it's not because of the long touchdowns. Like that, his fantasy production, sure, but like his broken coverages don't lead to 13 targets.
Yeah, but 13 targets with a few of them being deep can lead to minimal.
You're viewing
yardage.
You are using 2020 Deebo when he was not fully healthy against 2021 Deebo when he is healthy. Also, Trey Lance throws further downfield Jimmy Garoppolo because he's a competent quarterback. So, like, there are things that work in Deebo's favor here. I think you're too tied to your priors based on old data when Deebo was hurt.
I'm tied to like a league average or a position average ADOT. Actually, no, it's not even. He's at what, like 7.7?
Right, but like 7.7 with 13 targets is awesome.
So he's at 9 points. No, that's just week 4. Yeah.
He's at 7.5 or 7.7, I think.
Yeah, that's 3 yards shorter than the. I'm saying it.
But the average person doesn't get 13 targets.
I know. I'm saying I'm fine with Deebo if Lance plays because the salary is like it cancels out. If it's Garoppolo, I'm probably not getting there because I don't want to spend $7,700 for Deebo. If
it's Garoppolo, I'd probably still go there because, for game stacks.
Yeah.
Because
he's the only one.
They'd probably throw a bit more. Yeah, I'm not using Ayuk. If Kittle gets into full practice on Friday, he's like justifiable, but not desirable. So I think it's really about Deebo there. I can't use the running backs given that Edmonds has no touchdown upside. So, but like Deebo works. I think that to me, if I'm building one stack here, it's Kyler, Kirk, Deebo, and I feel fine about that.
Yeah, it's just there's probably 2 chalky stacks, like 2 of the most obvious. It's that one or sub in AJ Green there, and like.
I don't think people want to use AJ. AJ Green's barely rostered in season long. People aren't going to use him in DFS. Like, I'm fine with him, but I don't think he's going to be popular.
I'm just saying, not from a popularity standpoint. It's like that's the path to stacking this game, basically.
Yeah,
Kyler, Deebo, and then just pray for the right receiver. Like that's not a good game stack. I could say that same thing for like all these worse games.
I mean, it's different when it's a good offense, and it is a good offense and has a path to upside. So. Like, sure, it can go poorly, but like, again, our focus is not on floor, our focus on ceiling, and they've got ceiling. So we have to divorce ourselves of ceiling or of floor mentality. We've been trying to do that all year, and suddenly for stacks, it comes back in. Kind of weird. I'm
not talking about floor.
I don't know, man.
Where's that coming from?
I don't know. Let's move on here to Jags Titans. Two bad defenses here, which is always fun. Total is 48.5. Titans favored by I think 4 now. Who's betting? Oh no, it's 4.5 still. Just kidding. Those numbers are pretty steady. I thought people were betting Urban Meyer. Good for you. You spend your money how you want. We don't know for sure yet the status of the Titans pass catchers. Carlos Hyde will go, so that does, to me, kill James Robinson. But are you willing to stack this game?
No.
I think I can do Derrick Henry run it back with Marvin Jones or
I was going to say no, but a mini stack maybe with
no quarterbacks, Henry. Right?
No.
Even if we get like AJ Brown, I don't think I can use Tannehill.
Tannehill's looked like, again, I don't try to watch football for like film analysis, but I feel like I've just seen him get like blindside sacked way too often.
Then you've seen 10.1% of his dropbacks because that's just like on 10.1%.
Just like unaware, like oblivious, just like getting sacked, and it's like I don't want any part of this offense aside from
Marcus Mariota's back apparently getting high sack rates for no reason. All right, let's go. Yeah,
but yeah, the Jaguars, we talked about their passing offense a little bit on their recap show, I think.
Yeah, we did.
So
I think it's just like Henry with a run back of Marv or Chenault, preferring Marv personally, because I think people will be on Chenault this week.
Yeah, I'm not going to play Chenault.
Yeah, I mean, I'll use him because his salary's low and he has a role, and he might get a better role, so I'll use him, but I don't really not seeking it out.
Yeah, let me clarify. I will play him sometimes when I play Derrick Henry, but I won't play him outside of those lineups.
Yeah, that range is pretty bad. So I might like in the same. I mean, Devontae Smith stands out at 6,000, but then you're looking at Laviska's by Devontae Parker's role is fine, but his quarterback is doo-doo. AJ Green's there. Don't really like him for standalone plays. Darnell Mooney's fine, but like the offense really wants to run the football a lot. Robbie Anderson is dust, unless Christian McCaffrey sits. Like it's a pretty bad range. I like Kadarius Toney 53, but like it's not a good range of wide receiver.
No, but again, there's not a whole lot of salary we might need. Like if
I use Derrick Henry, I will. Yeah.
Okay. If you play Derrick Henry, you don't need 5 guys in the 5,000 range.
I think I do.
Huh?
I think I do.
The salaries just aren't that high overall this week.
Yeah. Problem is the 5,000 range of receiver is not great. So I'll wind up having some Laviska, but either way. Tight spread and plenty of fantasy relevant guys in Los Angeles for the Browns and the Chargers. Chargers now 2-point favorites. The total though ain't great. It's gone down to 46.5 for an open of 49.5. That makes sense given the way the defenses have played here, but the Chargers operate at a fast pace. They are willing to air things out. So how are you viewing this game from a stacking perspective with the total sinking?
Well, I saw just before the show that Baker Mayfield's I think it was a torn labrum or something.
Torn something in his left shoulder, his non-throwing shoulder.
Non-throwing, but still, you got to figure that impacts efficiency. And I've been kind of hard on Baker this year as it is. I talked about watching Ryan Tannehill and being kind of underwhelmed. Baker's been pretty bad relative to expectation. He's got a 9.6% sack rate himself. Odell Beckham's role has been quite good. The production has been quite bad. I don't want anything to do with Nick Chubb at this point. I'm also not quite there with Kareem Hunt. So maybe Odell from the Cleveland side.
Yeah.
For the Chargers, I always like them more with Austin Eckler, Mike Williams, Keenan Allen, Jared Cook. That's it. I'm fine with them. I honestly, because we're struggling with quarterback, I might consider Justin Herbert.
Yeah.
But it's right. I'm unenthused by that. So
yeah,
it's basically the Chargers skill players without much confidence to bring it back.
what is your level of confidence in the Chargers guys? Because I feel pretty good about them. Like, I
Yeah.
love Eckler. I love Keenan. I love Jared Cook. Definitely okay with Mike Williams despite his salary being a bit too high. So
Mm-hmm.
I'm okay with all those guys. Does the concern around the Browns trickle over into being concerned about the Chargers guys at all?
Yeah, I think so, in the sense of, like, if I'm building like a single cash game lineup for like our head to head that we play,
Yeah.
I would have enough concerns where I would maybe try to go elsewhere to get access to games where I think it might be a little bit more competitive. Um, but overall, like, it's kind of a lukewarm slate to have like strong preferences. So
Yeah.
relative to that, I like the Chargers. If this were like a better slate, I would be like, maybe it's just a week where I don't really play the Chargers as much.
I think Eckler is a firm cash game consideration. I wouldn't put him above Saquon Barkley, but I'm also very open to having both in my cash game lineup. So I think that Eckler grades out really well there, given the role that he has had. I think that he is definitely solid. Very okay with Jared Cook in the same situations. Okay with having both in the same lineup as well. So the concerns I have around the Browns don't worry me as much about the Chargers because I think the Browns will at least do something offensively. I
Can I
would
ask you
also
this?
say, go ahead.
Baker's hurt. It's a tight spread. They might lean on the run more and more. Nick Chubb's salary is 7,500 and Kareem Hunt's is 7,000. Do you think you'll have any lineups with either of those
Did you
guys
say
this week?
7,000?
7,000.
Are you kidding me?
I was like, he's probably. I was like, you know what? Kareem Hunt's probably like 65, and they might trail. So maybe I'll take a look.
I'm
And
not
he's
using
seven.
Kareem Hunt then. I could use Nick Chubb because the Chargers desperately want you to run on them. Like, that is their thing.
Okay.
Like, they invite you to do it. So he will in no way be part of my core. He would be at most 15%, preferably 10. But there is a path to him having a really good game here because they like beg you to run on them.
Well, a really good game for Nick Chubb is kind of its own thing. He's had 15 carries, 11, 22, and 21, with 21, 16, 8, and 11 FanDuel points. He scored twice in week 1 and had 21 FanDuel points. He
Right.
scored once in week 2 with 16 FanDuel points. And he's also turned 20 plus carries into 19.4 total points the past 2 games.
The one thing that I think is helping him be okay there, like, again, I don't like him that much, but the reason I could still use him is I don't know how high scores will be at running back this week. Like 21 might be enough.
That's
David
fair.
Montgomery got hurt last week and made it with 23.
Yeah,
So
running back's its whole own thing this year
yeah,
again.
yeah, it is. Especially
Remember that year where you just had to play like Le'Veon
David
and
Johnson.
David Johnson every week?
They were 10,000 and it was like, who cares? We're still, I think, did someone get to 12,000 that year? Or was it Todd Gurley maybe?
Todd Gurley was like just a weekly lock button too.
Yeah. I wish we had that. So get healthy, McCaffrey, get healthy, Dalvin, stay healthy, Derrick Henry. Derrick Henry is like actually getting that kind of work right now, but
yeah,
other guys are questionable there. So Chubb is a limited tournament play, and if I use him, I must have a Charger on the other side. And I know a lot of people don't like putting running backs in game stacks. I don't mind a Chubb because most of his production is predicated on big plays, which don't burn as much clock. So he works better from that perspective. Let's move now to our trends discussion. Talk about some more games that could be stackable. And I think the one we like the most is the Giants versus the Cowboys. You're focusing on the pace here for the Giants. And what does that do for this game as a whole?
Makes me like it a lot. I talked about this in passing on Monday's recap podcast, but the Giants have really turned around their offensive pace. I run some data looking at seconds per play based on pre-snap win probability. Back in week 1, the Giants were clocked as the slowest team in the NFL when their pre-snap win probability was between 20 and 80%. But in the week since, they've ranked between 10th and 14th, which is not blistering, but it is above average, and it's a lot better than 32nd. And when you combine that with the up-tempo offense of the Cowboys, who have ranked first, and third the past 3 weeks, you have to like that. So pace, the reason that we like pace and people talk about pace is that it just means more plays. And at least in theory, that means more chances for fantasy points, unless the clock is always running. But, this game just combines to rank second in average pace for me on the main slate behind New England and Houston, which is not going to get me on that game despite the pace. And I don't know about you. I think I know about you a little bit more, but I'm warming up to Daniel Jones. He's my half quarterback that I'm considering this week. He's got rushing potential. His ADOT is 8.9 yards, which is 1.2 yards better than the league average. His passing net expected points per dropback is a 0.21. That's numberFire's efficiency metric. Adjusted for opponents, he's easily outperformed that as well. And we have some injuries here that open up some value. Now we do, and I don't want to be hypocritical, we do talk about injuries to key pieces hurting offenses, and I think there's a little bit of that here still. But the past 2 weeks with Evan Ingram and without effectively Sterling Shepard and Darius Slayton, we have Saquon Barkley leading the team with an 18% target share. That's 6.5 per game. Ingram, Kadarius Toney, and Kenny Golladay are at a 17% target share, which is 6 per game. Golladay leads in air yard share. John Ross is playing a bit as well. His speed, he got some downfield work for a long touchdown last week, but put him out there, that's going to open things up a bit. And the value's there. Like the salaries are low. Barkley's 7,800, which isn't a value necessarily, although he might be a little bit low for what his role is. Daniel Jones's salary 7,400. Kenny Galladay's 6,200. Kadarius Toney 5,300. I think the question that we always want to ask for game stacks is: we like one team. Do we like the other team enough to bring it back? I'm willing to say yes, but I'm also willing to go even farther than that and say I like the Giants as their own stack to bring it back with the Cowboys. So what are your thoughts here?
I think that last week was the best game Daniel Jones has ever played.
Well,
Question mark?
we had that one game, like his first or second game, and then everyone put him in the Hall of Fame.
No, I mean, but this one, he was facing a very good defense in a tough environment without his top two, I would say his two best right now pass catch. I like Darius Slayton a lot. So seeing him do that in that spot to me really did change the way I view him in this team, because I, as people know, I'm not a big Daniel Jones guy, but if he can do that against them, he can do a lot against a Cowboys defense that is fine, but it's not elite. I like them. I think they're good, but they're not elite. So yeah, I think that the Giants make a ton of sense. I love Saquon Barkley. I probably put him in my cash game lineup before Damian Williams. I go Barkley 1, Damian 2, probably relative to salary. So I think that Saquon is among the best running back plays in the slate. And I think that Kadarius Toney is a really good value option on this team too. $5,300, 9 targets last week. The first week where they were game planning around him playing a significant role, they got him the ball downfield. They got him on manufactured touches too. When Cordero Patterson was with the Vikings, we talked about how manufactured touches are bad because they can't generate their own stuff. That's true. But when they're getting manufactured touches on top of, organic ones, I think that's a good thing. So I thought that was good for Toney. I like him a lot at 53, assuming those guys sit once again. So I think that Toney is a core play. I think that Saquon's a core play. I like both these guys, and it gives me a lot of confidence in putting Dak Prescott as my number one quarterback on the slate.
Yeah, Dak's the number one because he is easy to stack. So I have him a little bit above Kyler from that angle. I'm warming up to Toney for sure with the work that he got. He also kind of the squeaky wheel narrative because he's not been very happy. Now it took some injuries for this to come to fruition, which is not really the progression you want to see. You want to see that happen before, but yeah, I mean for 5,300, that's a really key piece to game stacks. It helps with the salaries for the Cowboys.
I mean,
and
Lamb's
also
low salary too.
What's that?
Lamb's low salary, so you don't have to offset that.
Yeah, but I was going to say if Zeke's four to go, that helps me there. And then also Amari Cooper at 71. It's not a high salary. If he's a full go, because then he's got the Q tag. I would be more inclined to play Amari Cooper if I could bring it back with someone whose salary is 5,300, whereas I might just heavily prioritize CD Lamb otherwise.
I agree. Let's say that Zeke and Amari both get in full practices Friday. How are you viewing them here this week?
Just like them. I mean, Amari's got his own issues. We're kind of ragging on DeAndre Hopkins for a bad market share right now. Cooper's got that as well, even without Michael Gallup. So that's a bit of an issue, but within the right game, and I guess maybe this should just be something that I don't know. I guess I sound like a big hypocrite here because I'm saying Nuke's banged up and his market share is bad, but I like the game a little bit. Amari's banged up, the usage is bad, but I just like the game more. I guess that's probably the distinction.
I think Amari's going to wind up being third on the Cowboys for me no matter what. Like, I think I'll wind up having more CeeDee Lamb than Dalton Schultz just because I think that their roles are good and their salaries are good. But I would like to get to Amari. I would love for him to be healthy so I could use him because I don't think people will use him this week. So I would love to get there. I
Right.
just want to get the all clear first.
Yeah. And that's kind of with Galladay too at 62. Like those lower salaries make me more willing just to take some chances on Amari. Whereas if the value wasn't as good in this game, I would probably stay away more.
So is this number one for you for stacking?
It is by far number one. I don't even know what my number two is.
I think I agree. So we're all in on Daniel Jones. What could go wrong? Let's move to my first trend here and talk about the Packers-Bengals game. It has a lot of the elements we like for stacking. It's a high total, tight spread. We generally know where the ball is going, but there is risk this game is pretty slow. If you go by Football Outsiders pace numbers, the Packers rank 21st in pace and the Bengals are 32nd. Brandon runs his own pace numbers too, which he posts up on numberFire.com. Great site. And this grades out as being the second slowest game on the main slate, just ahead of Broncos Steelers, which is an easy cross off. And that's annoying given the number of good pieces we have in this game. I think that's enough where I can cross off Joe Burrow and Aaron Rodgers. The question is how much it dampens the appeal and the skill guys. And I don't think it matters for Devontae Adams. He is at 11.3 targets per game this year with 3.3 deep targets per game. That's despite a slow pace. That's worth anything. Aaron Jones in 3 full games, if we cross off week 1 where they left in like the second quarter, basically, he's at 25 adjusted opportunities per game, 103 yards per game. He has 53% of the red zone chances. He got banged up last week, but he returned a kick late in that game. It was like kind of I think they were looking for an onside and they wanted like a sure-handed guy back there. So it wasn't like a true kick return, but like they felt like he was fine. So at $8,400, his salary is up enough where he's not an absolute no-brainer. He does lose some work to AJ Dillon, but I think that he's like a good rotational piece for tournaments. A guy who does have a lot of upside. I like to capture. As far as the Bengals go, we talked about Samaje Perine being skeptical of whether he gets passing game work there. I do think that the pace impacts the Bengals pass catchers. If you look at the first 2 weeks with T. Higgins, nobody averaged more than 7.5 targets per game. The targets were concentrated, but they were so run heavy that it didn't really matter. Maybe that changes if Mixon is out, but the salaries are up. Jamar Chase is 73, T. Higgins 67. So to me, I like Jones. I love Devontae, maybe big shot Bob Tunyon, but then whatever we read, maybe we go Samaje Perine, but like the rest of the stuff is kind of a tough sell. So Brandon, what's your view on this game, all things considered?
You're interested in CJ Uzoma at 5,500?
I have a best ball dynasty league where you are required to start 2 tight ends. I hope he goes nuts, just not for my DFS rosters. I need him. I lost David Montgomery. So CJ, rest up, bud. Get those targets, man. Get those tuds.
Yeah, we talked about just like pace and pace trends a lot on Monday's show, and I'm starting to like rank teams by week. The Packers have not ranked better than 27th yet in pace, and the Bengals were 17th, 22nd, but the past 2 weeks 28th and 29th. Again, this kind of adjusts for game context. It's really difficult to want to love games with expected slow paces. So I was going to ask you, this game must rate out really well in expected offensive efficiency if the total's 51.5. And we're expecting slow paces. I don't know if you have that pulled up, but
I can. Okay, so Green Bay is 5th in expected offensive efficiency. Cincinnati is 21st.
Okay. Yeah, I like Jamar Chase plenty. The salary's high. Also, I don't know realistically what I'm gonna get to, because like he's got a 24% target share. That's 6.3 targets per game. Weighted for leverage on like downfield and red zone stuff, it's kind of more equal to like 8.2 targets. But play volume is a real thing.
Yeah.
That's why I'm just down on this game. That's why it's really hard for me to rank it second or let alone like kind of rank it definitively. So this might be one of those spots where I could look like a big dummy, just kind of fading a game unintentionally, like getting some exposure to Devontae and Aaron Jones, but not really piling up on this game with a total of 51.5. I would probably bet the under here. So I think I might just kind of avoid it.
Yeah, I think the under is in play. It's gone up though, so I'd wait to bet it if you're actually looking for betting advice. It was 50 and it went up to 51.5. So if you want the under, wait until Sunday if you can. But I think that is also attractive. Let's move to your second trend now and talk about the Bears offense under Justin Fields. Not a big sample on it yet, and only one game where Bill Lazor has called plays. But what are you seeing in that small sample with Justin Fields as the Bears starter?
Okay, so in Justin Fields' 2 starts, the Bears rank 5th in offensive pace based on my data in a small sample of plays that's not garbage time. It's 37 plays, but they're 29th in pass rate at about 46%. By comparison, in week 1 with Andy Dalton in his full game, they were league average in each. We like the pace. The pass rate is a bit of an issue. I will say that when you look at situations where they've trailed with Justin Fields in his starts, when they've trailed by at least 7, which was just week 3, they did have a 77.8% pass rate, but their first quarter pass rate in his 2 starts has been 25%. It's 6 passes and 18 rushes. They want to run the ball until they can't. That's pretty evident. It's worth noting the efficiency here. Fields was really bad against the Browns, who ranks 7th by numberFire's adjusted metrics and pass defense. And he was good-ish against the league's worst pass defense last week with the Lions. But he's at negative 0.32 passing net expected points per drop back. With opponent adjustments, he's at about a negative 0.43. I don't want Jared Goff to catch any strays, but I think that was like his rookie season.
Come on, man.
Number at 0.43. But
why? You could have chosen anyone. You could have chosen literally anyone.
Well, he's someone who always comes to mind.
Why? Why not he's basically Kaiser or something?
He's just basically been the worst quarterback with like any semblance of a sample here. And that's tough. There is a very easy case to make that he's better than what he's shown through 2 games. I'm not saying that this is just who he's going to be, but he has a big hole to climb out of to get his efficiency back on track after how week 3 went. And he's not getting a lot of volume to like erase that. So I think it's going to be important that we kind of just exclude weeks 3, maybe even week 4 for him and just kind of see what he does against teams that aren't more outlierish with their defenses. But I just laid out a case for an inefficient run-heavy offense, but yet I still kind of want exposure to it, and I'm not sure why.
Well, it's because you know that he's not that bad.
Yeah, but I know I also can't fool myself into thinking that he's going to be really good all of a sudden.
No.
I think the salaries are what really helps. Damian Williams just shaping up to be the lead back at a $5,800 salary. You and I both like him. 33% of the snaps, 39% of the routes last week, with David Montgomery leaving early. He also was mixing in before that, so that's nice, nice to see. But the receivers are also low salaried, with Allen Robinson at 6,100. Darnell Mooney is at 5,600 with his salary. On all passes from Justin Fields, Mooney leads with a 28.8% target share, which is really high for a target share that used to be like this is now like elite, like 29%. We're kind of seeing more dispersed target shares, but 42% of the air yards. Allen Robinson still was getting 25% of the targets with a 10.9 yard ADOT. The past 2 weeks, that's led, though, to 11 and 9 targets total, respectively, so you don't love that. And it is worth noting, I talked about some first quarter stuff. Darnell Mooney got all 4 targets in the first quarter last week.
Looked good, too.
I love Allen Robinson, but it's hard not to like Darnell Mooney here. Also, Cole Kmet at 4,800 has a 15% target share, a 10.9 yard ADOT on his 8 targets from Fields. That's a pulse at tight end, 79% route rate over the past 2 weeks. Like market share wise, if you told me like 29% for one, like an extreme value receiver, 25% for a really good receiver, 15% for a tight end, I would be like, this is great. But that just doesn't lead to a lot of volume. The efficiency is not there. I still have interest in all 4 of the skill position players. Is that like outrageous?
No, I don't think it's outrageous. One thing that I think justifies it is that I talk a lot about most relevant sample. Week 3 is not the most relevant sample because there's a different guy calling plays. Like Bill Lazor called plays in week 4. So like, I'm not saying you just like toss out week 3 from an efficiency perspective because week 4 they're facing the Lions, who are hideous, and the Raiders are more middle of the pack. But it does let me feel better about like, oh, okay, like Justin Fields, the inefficiency is not like a known. Like it's not a known. He could be fine. I don't think he'll be as good a deal against the Lions, but he could be fine. I think that's encouraging. Another thing too is the script will not be as outrageous as it was against Detroit, but like I would still assume it'll be a run heavy offense because against the Lions, they had 24 early down first half plays and they ran on 16, I think of those, 17 of those. So they're going to be run heavy when they can. I think that's good for Damian. So I like Damian Williams a lot. I think that there is enough there to justify Mooney. I will not get to Robinson, though, and I will not get to Kmet. I think to me, it's just the 2 guys. I like Williams a lot. I am okay with Mooney, and I don't want Robinson or Kmet.
I like, we don't need to linger on this forever, but Fields wasn't even that good last week.
He had 0.32 passing to expected points per dropback. What do you mean?
Adjusted for opponent, he would have been about a 0.6.
0.6 is good for a rookie quarterback. Like that's fine. If you give me 0.06 against the Raiders because they're league average, that's fine. That can support a decent offense. That's fine.
He was below league average against the worst pass defense.
No, he was not below average when you would, because you're already adjusting. You're double adjusting. You're double adjusting, counting for opponent.
Okay.
You can't double account. Either say he was below average when you adjust, or you say he was above average in a vacuum. Like you either do one or the you can't double adjust.
Okay.
Yeah. Good. So like against a league average offense like the Raiders, you'd expect 0.06. 0.06 is better than every rookie quarterback, and it's sustained. We can use pass catchers in that offense. Like it's not desirable, but like it's fine.
Yeah, I mean, and we got the large sample of 18 dropbacks to bank on.
You were the one who said that you wanted to use them. I'm lower on them than you. Why are you arguing with me on this?
I didn't say I wanted to use Justin Fields. I said
you said you wanted to use Allen Robinson, who I would never consider.
Why would you never consider Allen Robinson?
Because he's dust, dude. He's toast. Will Allen Robinson ever catch a downfield pass again in his life? Probably not. He had 63 yards last week. Okay, so there we go. Can you give me 85 yards or 2 touchdowns? Probably not. I think Mooney can. So that's the distinction for me. So okay. I need Alvin Robinson to resurge. By the way,
I thought maybe you were looking for some like positive signs for Robinson, like I was, but you've already written him off.
He's retired. He's done. Okay. He's donezo. Never even played.
Okay, so that
season long.
That explains things.
Yeah, I think Mooney's fine. Williams very good. That's how I'm viewing this offense. And I hope that they open things up a bit more so we can be more enthused about Mooney going forward, but I don't want to assume that they will. Let's move now to my second trend and talk about the Eagles, because going into the year, I thought the Eagles would be a run-heavy team because that's how they played last year when Jalen Hurts took over, and it made sense. That has not been the case. Your numbers have them ranked 9th in pass rate with win probability between 20% and 80%. That's very good. That's good for pace. At Establish the Run, they use pass rate over expectation. The Eagles rank 2nd there behind just the Bucs, which is good for Devontae Smith because, targets are good, but it's also good for opposing teams because it helps keep the pace high. And the Eagles are 9th there by your numbers. And that's a boost to everyone in this game between the Panthers and the Eagles. and the Panthers will air it out too. They're 12th in pass rate for you, 9th in pass rate above expectation over at Establish the Run. They're not a fast team. They rank 31st in pace for you and 25th in Football Outsiders, but the building blocks for a decently fast game are there. The total for this game is up to 45.5. It's come back up a point, but I think it has a shot to go over that number as well. And that makes Smith a play once again. 23% of the team's targets, averaging 2.5 deep targets per game. The Panthers side of things depends a bit on Christian McCaffrey. With him out in week 4, Robbie Anderson perked up with 11 targets, but he was at 3.7 per game in the first 3 weeks. If McCaffrey plays, I think it's just McCaffrey and DJ Moore for me, but that's a good duo. Like, not saying just there is not like saying, oh, boo-hoo. If McCaffrey sits, then I'll consider Anderson at 57, but I also just don't think he's that good. So I think this game is a bit underrated due to the low total, and I'm not sure I'll get to the quarterbacks here. I think that Hurts is, along with Daniel Jones, like in contention for the third slot if we don't get Lance, but I like the skill guys here a decent amount. So am I wrong to be like kind of okay with this game?
It's definitely on the radar. The issue is I think it's just a very narrow like way to stack it.
That's fine. But like if we know where the ball's going, isn't that good? You can't poo-poo the Cardinals and say get mad when we know where the ball's going.
Narrow as in like if it's not Devontae Smith, DJ Moore, and Christian McCaffrey, I don't know where it's going to come from. So, yeah, but like that works. But I can't call that like a game that I love. I like what I see enough from what you've run down to want to play those guys. Mm-hmm. Possibly Jalen Hurts. I would be open to Darnold because of the state of quarterback. But I also can't, like, I don't feel great enough to rank this one. Like, I can't rank a game second. I can't do it this week.
I wouldn't put it second, but like I can be very good with the skill guys in it. I think that's the overall thing for me is like, I feel good about game stacking DJ Moore, Devontae Smith, or Christian McCaffrey, Devontae Smith, but I also think it helps those guys as one-off plays. I think that Devontae is a very good one-off play at wide receiver. I think that DJ Moore is a solid one-off play at wide receiver. And if we get McCaffrey, I would be down for him as well. So I think that's the main takeaway for me is A, I can have mini stacks, and B, I don't have a lot of concerns around those guys as one-offs.
Yeah, I mean, Devontae's run like significantly more routes than any other Eagle. He's just the guy. I'm not chasing any of the tight end stuff that we've seen from them. Miles Sanders is dusty. Would you rather play Robbie Anderson or Allen Robinson?
It depends on if McCaffrey plays. If McCaffrey plays, I'd rather use Robinson. If McCaffrey sits, I would go Anderson. But I don't really want to use either.
Okay.
Like I would use Robbie if McCaffrey can't go, but like it's out of obligation due to the target volume. It's not because I want to use him or not because I buy into the talent or anything. Or the Temple narrative with Matt Rule or the Darnold narrative with Darnold. Like I did,
the Jets narrative.
Yeah.
Yeah. I looked into that. He wasn't really like his number one receiver or anything.
He was for like a 4-game stretch at the end of 2 separate seasons, but it was like, oh, wow, why didn't he do this the first 12 games? And he didn't do it the first 12 games the next year too. So yeah, I agree. Weather for this week, only one to note. There is a chance of rain in Washington as they host the Saints. Doesn't look too windy, but at least worth noting. Could be rain there. We don't care too much about rain in a vacuum, but if there's wind, we care. Seems like that one should be good to go. So let's dive now into our positional plays for week number 5. Starting off at quarterback, Brandon, who you got there for week 5?
I have Kyler Murray despite not knowing who to stack him with. I'll just take my chances. I said AJ Green first. I think it's probably Christian Kirk just kind of as the 1A right now. I think Kyler's very much in play, possibly even without anyone, but I would just take the chance for the upside correlation to stack him whenever I do use him. 7th in pace for this game on the main slate, but 4th in pass rate. His floor if you compare his floor odds to his ceiling odds, he's easily the best quarterback on the slate. His 90th percentile outcome is easily the best on the slate. He's at a league average ADOT, but unlike last year, he's performing over expectation. He was really like league average with all the adjustments I use for his efficiency. So he's been doing better with the passing. He had the shoulder thing last year. 5.8 rushes per game, 27 rushing yards per game, 1.5 red zone rushes per game. I like that. And then my second love is going to be Daniel Jones at 7,400. It's too early to know if we'll get Trey Lance, who would be here, but I guess Daniel Jones is kind of shaping up to be my guy at this point. He has played above opponent expectation with his passing efficiency, averaged 6.8 rushes, 47 rushing yards per game, which is third best behind only Lamar Jackson and Jalen Hurts, 1.3 red zone carries per game, which works out to 28% of the team's red zone carries. And I just love this game environment too much not to consider Daniel Jones.
I think that he would be like third or fourth for me. I might not get there. I might just go with two guys if we don't get Trey Lance. But yeah, I think that he's right there. He and Hurts are the two guys like right on the fringe at quarterback. My first love is Dak Prescott. I've talked myself into this being the best game for stacking, which makes Dak pretty automatic. The Cowboys' game plan the past 3 weeks has revolved heavily around the run, but it's also revolved around what their opponents don't do well. We saw in week 1 that they will be super pass heavy when they need to. The Giants defense is, I think, ranked 26th against the pass and 30th against the rush, so it could go either way. But that does mean that Dak has a path to volume. I mean, we know the efficiency will be there. He's $8,100 playing at an elite level. Dak is my number one. Number two depends on if we get Trey Lance. If we get Trey Lance, I'll go him. If not, I'll go Kyler, my number two quarterback. The appeal in Lance is pretty obvious. He ran 7 times for 41 yards in the second half this past week. That does not mean he'll run for 82 yards this week, but it means he'll run. And I think that is a good thing overall. He's facing Arizona, good defense, but they've struggled against the rush. I've heard, I listened to a lot of like football heavy podcasts, like football, and like they say that it's like a lack of discipline on the team, and I buy into that. So I think that is detrimental when you're facing Trey Lance and Kyle Shanahan. So I think that it sets up well for him at $6,900. May not need those savings, but it makes it easier to get to Derrick Henry and Devontae Adams. So I'll take it. If I get it, again, Kyler will be in my player pool. I think it's Dak, Lance, Kyler, and then either Jones or Jalen Hurts for that next spot after that for me for this week. Let's move to running back. What you got there?
I had Saquon Barkley. You're going to talk about him too. So I'm going to pivot to Derrick Henry and talk about why he would be worth the salary.
Cool.
He's averaging 35.8 adjusted opportunities per game, which is carries plus double your targets, because that's more indicative of how much a target's worth on a half PPR site such as FanDuel. Receiving work does matter for running backs, even on a half PPR site. Najee Harris is at 30.8. So that's 5 more opportunities per game than anyone else. And Najee's obviously inflated by that 19 target game. Christian McCaffrey's at 28.7, Dalvin Cook 27.7. Obviously, neither of those guys are super healthy. And then we have Alvin Kamara at 26.5. So he's basically like 9 or 10 chances better than anyone else. And, with the 86% red zone rushing share, getting some receiving work with the 3.8, 36% of the routes, I really need to make sure that it's clear that I'm prioritizing Derrick Henry. I think I made it sound like I wasn't as enthused to get back up to him, but I am. My second love then is going to be DeAndre Swift at 6,900. He's got an elite target numbers right now, 7.3 per game. The only other running back above 5.3 is Najee Harris at 8.5, which again, inflated. It's 24.8 adjusted opportunities per game, 7th among running backs, and 6th if you don't include Christian McCaffrey. Minnesota is middling in expected points allowed to running backs, not an outlier against receiving backs. And then my third love is going to be Damian Williams, just because we know that the path is clear for him. He's pretty much close to a lock button. Is dealing with a thigh bruise himself, but they're going to give him the David Montgomery role unless something really crazy happens. Played 19 snaps last week to Khalil Herbert 6, 7 routes to 0 for him, 3 red zone carries, and again was a bit of a factor before Montgomery's injury.
Damien did get in a full practice on Wednesday.
Cool.
So quad injury, good to go there, which is good. So about Saquon here, my first love, just kind of too good of a role for this salary. He has, over the past 3 games, 25 adjusted opportunities per game. He has had 96 yards per game, 50% of the red zone chances. Dallas hasn't been anything crazy against the rush. So Saquon, to me, again, if it's not Damien first, it's Saquon, the first guy lock in for cash games. My second love, I was going to go Eckler. I still like Eckler a lot. Would consider him for cash. But I want to talk about Aaron Jones for a second. I don't think we talked enough about him, because the reason why I'm okay pivoting off of Eckler is because I think he's due for some negative touchdown regression, because he only gets 25% of the team's red zone chances, whereas Aaron Jones in his 3 full games is at 53%. So the touchdown numbers favor Jones by a heavy amount. He's actually had more adjusted opportunities per game in that same sample as well, about the same number of yards per game. So I want to make sure I'm not glossing over Aaron Jones. I do like Eckler a lot still, but I want to mention Aaron Jones as being a really good play at $8,400. My third love is also Damian Williams. 6 carries to 2 targets after Montgomery got hurt last week. He's played well. If you look at rushing success rates, so the percentage of carries that have increased the team's expected points for the drive, he's at 63%. The league average for backs is closer to 40%. It's only 16 carries, but like, he's played well. That's good. He has 10 targets, which is actually more than David Montgomery has. I think having Fields is a plus for Damian Williams. So I like Williams a lot. I would say, again, if Gio Bernard can't go, seems like he will, but if he can't go, I would like Leonard Fournette a lot. And I'd rank both those guys above Samaje Perine, assuming that Joe Mixon sits. Let's move now to wide receiver. What you got there?
Keenan Allen, again, always feels like a positive regression candidate. Like, just never quite feels like he converts the workload that he gets. But 7,200 is a really good salary for Keenan Allen. Again, I kind of talked about one of my themes for this week being not trying to chase so much the guys at the top of the receiver pool who have overperformed, but instead look a little bit lower at some of the guys who have underperformed. Had 100 yards in week 1, 108 in week 2, with no touchdowns in either of those. Then 50 yards with a touchdown in week 3. Week 4 was not great for him. I'm not going to explain that one away, but 11 targets still, which you can't hate on, with 38 yards. He's had at least 8 targets in every game, at least 11 in 3 of 4. He's one of the prime regression candidates among receivers. Second love is going to be CeeDee Lamb at 6,900. Just sticking with that, like the good receivers who aren't 8,000 or in the upper 7,000 range, but probably could be just as easily. So that leads me to CeeDee Lamb in my favorite game of the week. 89% of the routes, 24% of the targets, 2 downfield, 1 red zone per game. The biggest issue, I think, for him is the red zone work. We can see that go to Dalton Schultz and just anyone else, but just an 18% target share there. But CeeDee Lamb also has the ability to score from outside the red zone, which you don't want to bank on, but it's there. And because I went kind of higher salary with my first 2, I'm going to go down to Darnell Mooney at 5,600. Again, that 29% target share from Justin Fields. It's 11 targets total over the past 2 weeks, so 5.5 per game. They've been super run heavy. I talked about that, but they focused on him. 4 targets, 93 yards in the first quarter last week. I don't think they're going to be able to play keep away forever against their Raiders as 5.5 point underdogs. If they do, Mooney should still get 5 to 7 targets. And with his ability to make plays, you got to like that.
It also helps that he wins where Justin Fields wins, on the deep ball. So I think that's a good thing for him as well. My first love is also Keenan Allen. So we're all in on Keenan here. Same reasons you mentioned, prime regression candidate, great usage, 28% overall target share, 25% deep, 28% in the red zone. He's just too low salaried. I'm okay using him alongside Eckler. Okay using him alongside Jared Cook as well. I think that the usage here concentrated enough to make that super viable. My number 2 is Devontae Smith. I just like his role a lot. He is $6,000. He has 23% of the Eagles' overall targets and 2.5 deep targets per game. Carolina has added guys in the secondary, but Stephon Gilmore still on the PUP list. CJ Henderson just got there. Not sure how much that moves the needle for them. So I think Devontae Smith works really well at $6,000. My third love is Kadarius Toney at $5,300. It sounds like both Shep and Slayton are probably going to sit again. And Tony got 9 targets last week. 2 of those were downfield. He had a bunch of the line of scrimmage because they want the ball in his hands. It also helps that Tony should be in the slot a lot, which should help him avoid Trayvon Diggs, whereas I don't think Galladay will. So I think Kadarius Toney is my favorite salary saver at wide receiver at $5,300 in a game that I want to stack up quite a bit. Let's move to tight end, Brandon, the best position on the board. What you got?
I'm going to stick with Mike Gesicki.
Mike Gesicki? Stick with Gesicki? No, it's going to screw me up now.
Yeah, 5,600 is his salary. I'm already bracing for the Darren Waller like pain game because I don't quite feel the need to get there. But Gesicki has an 18% target share overall in the season, 20% in games with Jacoby Brissett. He's getting 1 downfield target per game. If you weight his workload for downfield and red zone work, he's got about 9 targets per game, which ranks him 3rd since week 2 behind Darren Waller at 9.5 and Travis Kelce at 9.3. So that's a really good workload. I'll take that. Tampa Bay is ranked 27th against tight ends in adjusted FanDuel points per target allowed. The Pats guys scored last week. They're going to have to throw. I could see like 10 targets for Gesicki. Just that's what tight end is at this point. My second love is going to be Jared Cook at 5,200. Really strong route rate, or strong enough at 67%. For Cook, 5.8 targets per game, 1.5 combined high leverage looks per game. Just a 15% overall target share, but that works in an offense that I like. 2 end zone targets, and Cleveland has been just 23rd in adjusted FanDuel points per target allowed to tight ends.
Yep, I think that Jared Cook is the best play on the board at tight end. I've got it as my one of my loves as well. Good role. He's had 5+ targets in 3 out of 4 games. I like this game a decent amount. He has some deep targets, like you said, the end zone targets too. He had one that was called back by a penalty as well. Those don't count, but it helps that they were throwing the ball to him in the end zone. I think Cook is the best play here. This is not like a process-based recommendation. It's more of like a feel-based thing, which is always good.
Oh yeah,
never has gone wrong. Big shot Bob Tunyon going to resurge in week number 5.
He's
back to the grave. What?
He's due.
He's not. Robert Tunyon, though, ran a route on 67% of the dropbacks last week, which is a very high number for a tight end. He had 7 targets, which was second on the team behind Devontae Adams, and he was kind of Marquez Valdez-Scantling, getting some prayer yards. He had a deep target that was nowhere near him, but hey, it still counts. He had 1 in the red zone. I think that he'll snap back soon, and we need touchdowns at tight end. You're likely to get touchdowns from guys tied to Aaron Rodgers. So I will take some shots at Tunyon. I can't have my exposure be too high because his role stinks and he's had less than 10 yards in 3 out of 4 games, but there's enough there for me to still take some swipes. What do you have at defense this week?
I'm going to go with Pittsburgh, assuming no Teddy. Pittsburgh is second in numberFire's adjusted pass defense metrics. Drew Lock, not very efficient, can kind of turn the ball over, can take some sacks. So that's kind of my primary one. But if Teddy plays, I would back off that a bit. And I think I could pivot to your love, but also Minnesota at 3,900, I think would be in play. They're outside the top 20 in overall defense based on numberFire's metrics, but against Jared Goff, there should be enough like play volume, chances for some mistakes there. So I would go with them. They're 3,900.
I like the Vikings a lot. I think for cash games, I'd be there. And I will use them for tournaments too. My love is Carolina because, as mentioned, I'm cool with stacking this game. I think Devontae Smith is very good. I'm considering Jalen Hurts a quarterback, but I just think Carolina is undersalaried right now. The Philly offensive line is super banged up. It's going to be an issue against Brian Burns. Sounds like Mailata may be back this week at left tackle, but it's not a good spot to be banged up on the offensive line. Eagles are passing at a high rate, which means more dropbacks. That's good for opposing defenses too. They're $3,800. So the Vikings at 39 work. I like Washington at 38. They are facing the Saints and Jameis if they ever let them drop back. Pittsburgh works. I don't mind the Chargers at 37 in lineups where I don't have, probably going to have a lot of Browns anyway, but I think the Chargers work too at 37. So really good mid-range at defense this week. It allows you to not spend a lot and still diversify there, which is good because I don't want to be overexposed to anything unless it's against Ben Roethlisberger. But I do think that it's a good week for defense for once. That is all that we have for this week. Brandon, any final thoughts for you before we close up shop for week number 5?
I just hope we get some clarity early this week so we can plan. But I guess maybe for those of us who are just spend all Sunday morning building, it doesn't matter. We should just, I guess, prefer it to be delayed. But just really keep an eye out. It's probably not a week where you build your lineups on Thursday or Friday and leave it sit.
Never do that anyway. Just fish move. Come on. You build them by hand Sunday morning like a true man or like a true human being. How dare you? Just do it.
Let the robots do it.
No. Come on. You got to
you set the parameters and then you let the robots do it.
Yeah, if you're going to do it that way. But
don't just for anyone.
I like having fun. I think it's fun to build lineups. Maybe that's just me. But be a true human being, build them by hand on Sunday. That is all that we have here for this week. We'll be back with you on Monday at 9 a.m. Eastern on the FanDuel YouTube page to wrap things up and go through our takeaways from week number 5. So make sure you are subscribed to the numberFire Daily Fantasy Podcast feed wherever you get your podcasts. We, of course, have UFC and NASCAR coming up this week as well. So lots of good stuff here on the numberFire Daily Fantasy Podcast feed. Brandon, if people have questions for you on Twitter, where can they find you there?
I'm at Gadula13, GDULA13.
And I'm at Jim Sannes, JIMSANNES. You can also follow the FanDuel Podcast Network at FanDuel Podcast. Big thank you to everyone for tuning in for today. Good luck to you in week 5. We'll talk to you once again next week. This has been the Heat Check Fantasy Podcast powered by numberFire.